I'm Erin Phillips. I'm the president of Power2Parent, and we are based in Las Vegas, Nevada. I started Power2Parent because I have 5 kids, and I had really seen that policies that were being brought to our kids in public school were aimed at circumventing the parents and teaching topics that were really not appropriate for our kids. And so, the reason why I really began this work was because I felt passionate about allowing parents to be informed and then empowered to be able to influence policy and be able to change the things that they don't like, and really they have to know before they can change anything. And so that's why I really was interested in starting Power2Parent.
Erin, I'd like to unpack that a little bit more about your story and how you got involved with this. Why specifically in your life did you feel necessary to start a parents' union in Nevada?
Yeah. So we've been doing this work for almost 6 years, and we really started in this issue with sex education. And one of the bigger issues we saw was not that it was really about sex education at all, but it was about social engineering. And then the more important piece was they wanted to change the opt-out requirement. And we had really seen that happen all over the country when I didn't realize until I started to really research it. But Planned Parenthood has dumped a bunch of money into a lot of states in order to change that policy. So in Nevada, we're one of 3 states that still requires opt-in for sex education. So that was kind of the issue that started our organization. But this last year, as we went online and we saw that teachers' unions were really holding kids hostage at home, and that the mental health issues for kids were really skyrocketing, we felt like we had these teachers that had a very powerful influence on what was happening to our kids, and we felt like we really needed to have that same type of influence. And so having a united group of parents we thought was really, really important, where we could really combat and come to the table with these large and private sector unions, public sector unions, teachers unions, and be influencers in the policies that affect our families.
Exactly. What you said about the opt-out, the opt-in, that's something that we're currently fighting in Florida. Right now in our legislative cycle is making sure that the parents are opting into the sex education. They have to have 10 days notice of what's going to be taught, because sex education is getting worse and worse and parents have no clue.
Right.
So how did you go about 6 years ago setting up your organization?
So when I actually was just in a meeting because I was involved with my kids' school, and I heard this issue of sex education brought up, and I wasn't familiar with any of the organizations that were coming in to change our sex education policies. So when I started to research these organizations, the main one was SECUS. I realized that they were very heavily funded by Planned Parenthood, and I really just went down the rabbit hole of really seeing all of these graphic topics and issues being presented. I had never even been aware that was happening. And so they've been very interested in changing what our kids are learning for a long time. In fact, it goes all the way back to Hugh Hefner in 1969 and Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. They partnered to have sex education put into schools. And when I realized that, I was just shocked. I mean, it doesn't even seem like that would be real. So there's been an agenda around sex ed specifically to really, I think, dismantle a lot of values and circumvent parents what they're teaching at home, and then just get these, just change the value system in the schools. And I think it's about social engineering. And so then I was like, okay, there's more to this than just sex education. It's really about how parents really need to know what's going on and really find their voice and be able to advocate. And if they don't know what's going on, they really can't advocate for their kids.
Absolutely. So your organization, Power2Parent, has created a parent union.
Yeah.
So have you found that there was any stigma around the term union in general?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we know that right now, especially the unions have been getting a lot of a big spotlight, and not for a good reason. And so we felt like, it was a little bit risky in a way to call it a parent union. But I do think that parents recognize that we need a unified front. We need a place where we can be really collectively building. I mean, we call it building a parent army at this point, because we need an army of parents that are unified behind one very specific cause. We have a very special interest, and that's our kids. So I do think it's a little, sometimes you think that unions have a little bit of a bad connotation, but I think overall people understand that a union has a lot of power, even if it could be good or bad. And so we're hoping to have a lot of power that's given back to the parents.
Absolutely. And your organization played a really big role in reopening schools in Nevada. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So in Clark County is the 5th largest school district in the country, and we have been, from the beginning of the school year, really been a part of the process of helping implement different plans and kind of identify what would be a better plan for our kids. But it hasn't really moved the needle of our trustees. And so about September, October, we realized there was just this really big trend with suicides, the increase of suicides for Clark County School District kids. And it was when we did our first open records request and really started to talk about it, there was 12 kids in 12 weeks of school who had committed suicide. And so we realized that this was just, an enormous, just a bigger problem than we really realized. So we really tried to message that and create some, sense of urgency for opening our schools. And we had just had so much pushback. So when we launched the parent union right around the same time, we really just started to, gather collectively, have parents together. And we started just recently having a really big grassroots effort. We partnered with other parents groups that are in the city, and we came together on this issue of getting our kids back in school. And on the night before I flew out to CPAC, we actually had a huge protest outside of the school board meeting, and we had hundreds of parents show up. We had students there. We had people who were coming to testify. We had a big sound system set up, and we wanted to make sure the trustees heard us from inside their meeting. And really the public pressure from the parents surrounding that meeting. Actually, the superintendent came out and opened the schools and the day before our protest, because we had created and generated so much pressure. Just really, making our voices heard. We were done having our kids staying online. So that was a big win for us in Nevada. And so starting actually on Monday, March 1st, our kids are going to start going back to school. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think that's the power of the parents union, is creating that pressure that they're not seeing. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, that individual parents on social media saying what's going on and communicating their concerns isn't enough. We need these parent unions that we can go together in different states to be able to provide that pressure, because otherwise they're not listening. These school boards aren't listening to the parents.
Yes.
And we need to get their voice back. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So what are the steps that you took to create this union, and how can maybe another state replicate that kind of process?
Yeah, I think that parents should have a union in every state. We obviously think the Power2Parent union model is really effective, and I think the way that we've been so effective is really obviously gathering parents and really informing them is the first step of what's going on. So we've done a series of cottage meetings, is what we call them, but essentially we're just asking people to come, invite 10 people or 20 people to their home and share what's going on in their county and with their district and the issues that are important to them. And then out of that, they would ask those people to also have their own meeting. So really a grassroots effort in that way. Really just in a real, I'm going to share with you, can you share with 10 people, has been really effective for us. And the other issue is that we need to know our school board representatives. I think people forget, they don't vote in a lot of school board elections. I think people just don't pay attention. And I tell parents all the time that your trustee oftentimes is more important than maybe even your congressperson in the way that it shapes your day-to-day life. And we've seen that because these trustees are able to hold our kids hostage by keeping them home and online. So I think that people don't realize that they need to be very engaged in those smaller races. And then I also think parents don't realize that you can have a relationship with your school board trustee. You can have a relationship with these elected officials. They are representatives. They represent you. And so if you live in a district where you don't like what's going on, you need to identify who your representative is, and have a meeting with them, have a phone call with them, make sure that you're reaching out and letting them know what you do and do not want. And I think, again, organizing parents together in one collective organization like this, I think, you may have another issue that you're concerned about over here, you may have another issue over here. We need to come all together in this one issue, which is our kids, and I think that's how we ultimately can be very effective.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do. For our audience members, how can they learn more about your organization?
Yeah, so if you go to power2parent.org, we're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And if you go to our website, please join our parent union. And it's power2parent.org/union. And if you want to have a union in your state and you want to start that, please reach out to us through our website.